Good afternoon. Happy Sunday. I apologize for my setup. I've just moved and I don't have my normal microphone, and I'm not recording in a place that's quite as echoey, so I apologize about that. I know some of you love the echo. Today we're going to be talking about this little video here. The thumbnail says $400,000 in bonds for recording police. So, obviously, we're going to see if recording police is a crime.
Hey, everybody.
Recording police is organized crime, is the assertion in the title. 4 people held on $100,000 bond each, Livingston, Texas police. I apologize, I've got a bit of a cough. So, someone in here said, where was it? This, some gal, excuse me, in here saying, James Freeman, you should be a defense attorney. I don't think you could possibly lose in any of these cases. Well, the only way that James Freeman could not lose in any of the cases would be if he got to determine what the cases were and what all the facts were and completely ignore what the actual charges that are being brought are about. So, let's see. This is going to be a little bit lazy today. I apologize. And by I apologize, I don't really apologize. Open the transcript. There we go. All right. They were charged with conspiracy to commit organized crime without conspiring, being organized, or committing a crime. That's pretty cool. Let's see. They were charged with engaging in organized criminal activity. A person commits crime if, with the intent to establish, maintain, or participate in a combination, which means that combination means 3 or more persons who collaborate in carrying on criminal activities, although participants may not know each other's identity. Membership in the combination may change from time to time, and participants may stand in a wholesaler, retailer, or other arm's length relationship in illicit distribution operations. But they can commit the offense if, with the intent to establish, maintain, or participate in a combination, or in the profits of a combination, or as members of criminal street gangs, the person commits or conspires to commit one or more of the following. And then it gives a list of all sorts of different offenses. All of these offenses. All the way down, gambling offenses punishable as a Class A misdemeanor. Any offense identified or classified as a felony under the tax code. I mean, just the whole gambit. The whole gambit. And then there's higher offensive if there's like sexual things there, like to prevent people from trafficking kids. All right, so on February 4th, 2022, HBO Matt went to the home of Melanie McCrory and Brandon White in Livingston, Texas, to get ready for a protest in Corrigan, Texas. Now, remember, this is his version of the story. I haven't watched the video. I don't know how well it tracks with it. I don't even know if the video tracks with reality, because you got to remember that videos can be edited, etc. Faked. So there's going to be a protest in Corrigan, Texas the following day. While Matt was walking from his car to the home, he was legally carrying a silenced pistol in a holster. So all he was doing, apparently, according to James Freeman, was walk from the car into the home with a silenced pistol on his hip. Now, there were at least 2 911 calls during that time. The one caller stated that there was a male walking with a gun in his hand and the entire neighborhood was going crazy. Now, I don't know, would that happen if he was just simply walking from his car to the house? I mean, that kind of makes it sound like he only walked like, 10, 15, 20 yards. But what if he parked 3 miles away and he was walking down the street, twirling the legally silenced pistol around his finger, aka an old-fashioned gunslinger? I don't know. I haven't watched the video, but then there was a second 911 call received by the department. So he did enough to get not one, but two 911 calls against him. Now, I'm not saying that anything he did was illegal. I'm just saying that maybe, just maybe, the way that James Freeman is laying out the alleged facts might not be entirely accurate to reality. Because, I mean, at least one 911 caller said that he was walking with the gun in his hand, whereas James Freeman says that he was carrying the silenced pistol in a holster on his hip. So who's lying? I don't know. I've seen enough 911 callers lie. Open records requests to the Livingston Police Department for that phone call have been denied. Rather have been denied, there should be a period there. And, I would expect that to be denied because there is an ongoing criminal investigation. They may be looking to see who placed those calls, maybe looking to see if maybe Matt or one of his criminal cohorts were the ones who placed the call to drum up police response, to bait police response, so that they could then say, "Ha ha, I am legally carrying this silenced pistol." Rather than telling the caller that these things are legal in the United States, multiple Livingston police officers responded to the home. And there should be a period there. So we don't know what the 911 operator said to anybody because he didn't get the call, remember? They tried to get the call. So he's just making stuff up. And I don't know entirely that it's the role of the 911 operator to know whether or not someone is or is not legally carrying a silencer. And that implies a lot of things. Now, it's my understanding, and again, check with a local Texas attorney because I do not practice law in Texas. So this is not me giving legal advice, but it is my understanding that in Texas, it is not a Texas state offense to possess or carry a silencer. Now, that doesn't mean it's legal to carry because federal law is what federal law is, and you've got to have a tax stamp for it, and I think you have to actually produce the tax stamp if they demand it. But in Texas, a Texas police officer can't, according to the new law, at least my understanding of it, again, check with a local attorney, can't ask about any of that. So, do with that as you will. It might be legal as far as Texas law is concerned, but it might not be legal as far as federal law is concerned. So, multiple Livingston police officers responded to the home, period. As should always be done, as soon as the police arrived, cameras came out to record the interaction. I think I agree with that. Sure, he gets that right. You should always record the police. The police wanted Matt to show ID and paperwork for the legal firearm, but Matt was not legally obligated to show or give them anything, and he didn't give the officers, and he didn't, period. The officers go and talk to a detective for about 10-15 minutes, after which the detective returns to the door and apologizes for the officers trying to demand ID and paperwork. They had no legal or lawful authority to demand the police to demand it. Okay, period. All right. So, again, according to the new Texas law, and maybe you could forgive the officers for not being up on every change to every statute in the Texas Penal Code. But yeah, that law has just recently changed. I think 2019 or something like that. So maybe they didn't know about it. You don't know. I mean, how often do these officers run into someone carrying a silencer? You don't know, and I don't know. All right. The police leave, and Matt and his friends carry on about their day. Fast forward to a few hours later. Yeah, just fast forward to it because nothing at all happens during that period of time. We're just going to fast forward through it. A file will show that he is a duly licensed peace officer in and for the state of Texas and is currently serving as a detective in and for the city of Livingston Police Department. A fight would show that on February 4th, 2022, his agency investigated the offense of engaging in organized criminal activity, which occurred at 308 West Church Street, Livingston, Polk County, Texas. A fight would show that Officer Chris Simmons, while on routine patrol and performing his law enforcement duties, observed a small four-door blue car stalking him as he drove his marked patrol unit. So he's accusing them of stalking him at this point. A fight would show that Officer Simmons stopped at the local convenience store and the vehicle stopped adjacent to his patrol unit in the parking lot. A fight would show Officer Simmons was concerned for his safety due to the recent killings and ambush of police officers while on duty. Yeah, they're always super duper concerned for their safety, so concerned that they will go up and confront you because they're concerned for their safety. A find would show that no one ever exited the vehicle while it waited on Officer Simmons to exit the business. A find would show Officer Simmons exited the business, entered his patrol unit, and the vehicle continued to stalk Officer Simmons as he exited the parking lot. A find would show the suspect's vehicle later turned off, and a short time later, it was circling the police department while Officer Simmons and Reyes were in the parking lot discussing the vehicle. A find would show Officer Reyes exited the police department parking lot in his marked patrol unit and observed a Hispanic male exit the blue vehicle, put on ballistic body armor vest, and then enter the driver's side of the vehicle. A find would show Officer Reyes notified Officer Simmons of what he had witnessed, and now the actions of the people in the vehicle were suspicious due to the overt action, and officers felt as if they were about to commit a criminal act and cause them bodily injury and or death. So the stuff that he fast forwarded through, then it goes on. I guess maybe we should go on and just get this read. The find would show Officer Simmons was able to obtain a license plate of the vehicle bearing yada yada. A find would show the vehicle registration was out of Texas. A find would show this raised more suspicion for the safety of Officer Simmons raised due to their suspicious actions and stalking. Now, I don't know why this would raise their suspicion even further, but it was out of Laredo, Texas. Let's see, Livingston County, Texas. And let's go to maps and directions from Laredo, Texas. Okay, so that seems like a bit of a drive. Maybe let's just make sure that this is Livingston County. Or is it Polk County? Livingston, Polk County, Texas. There we go. All right, so yeah, we're in the right spot. So it's about a 6-hour drive. So they might be wondering why this dude is 6 hours away from his home. Not saying that it's illegal to be from, Laredo, Texas is a border town. Well, that's interesting. That might be an additional reason why they were concerned because, bad people cross the border to do bad things. Huh. Interesting. A find would show that Officer Simmons made contact with the vehicle and occupants after they pulled into the bank parking lot adjacent to the police department. The find would show that the driver of the vehicle pretended that he did not speak or understand the English language and was video recording all the actions of Officer Simmons. So not that it's illegal to not be able to speak English, but that might raise their concerns. Like, what are these guys? Did they cross the border? Are they here to do harm? You know, uh, from my understanding, and I'm just a dumb California guy, the Mexican drug cartels are pretty vicious, and you know they might cross the border. Like if a Texas peace officer does something, maybe they'll cross the border to kill him. I don't know. I don't know. I only watch movies. A find would show the driver and all the occupants in the vehicle ignored Officer Simmons' request for their identification as a result of their suspicious behavior. There. So one thing I have seen is that let's see, Texas Vehicle Code failure to identify. Uh, the vehicle code one though. I know they have it. They have one in the vehicle. What do they call that? Yeah. So I want minus 38.02. Transportation code. That's what I wanted. On request. So now they know it's transportation code. Right there. So this is 521.025. Let's look it up in the official statutes. Display the license on the demand of a magistrate, court officer, or peace officer. And a cop is a peace officer. And a peace officer may stop and detain a person operating a motor vehicle to determine if the person has a driver's license as required by this section. So, yep. All right. So he could, under the transportation code, demand the ID of the driver. The finding would show the front seat white male passenger was video recording with his cell phone and being verbally rude to Officer Simmons while conducting his investigation. The finding would show that the white male sitting in the back seat behind the driver was positively identified known as Brandon Michael White, based on past law enforcement encounters for calls relating to his cell phone recordings and harassment of law enforcement. A find would show the Hispanic male driver was wearing tan-colored ballistic body armor vest with loaded ammunition. With loaded ammunition. A ballistic body armor vest with loaded ammunition. Loaded into what? Into the vest? Into a gun? What the hell does that even mean? A find would show that Officer Reyes arrived on the scene for officer safety and to assist in translating, but it was later determined that Hispanic male knew and could speak the English language after being verbally abusive to Officer Simmons. He was mean. A find which showed through further investigation, the driver of the vehicle was later positively identified as Ismail Rincon by his Texas driver's license number and photograph. The find would show Rincon's driver's license photograph was compared to officers' body cam videos from the traffic stop and matched with his description and characteristics of Ismail Rincon. A find would show Rincon had been stopped by the Texas Department of Public Safety in the same vehicle on at least 4 different traffic stops and issued citations. So what they're basically saying here is that, none of that was a crime in and of itself. It's not a crime to be identified from your driver's license number and photograph, or to have had 4 different traffic stops and citations in the past. What they're saying is they're just showing, they're proving, they're giving probable cause to the judge and say, look, we identified him. This is how we identified him. So go ahead and issue the warrant for Ismail. I don't know. I apologize to Mr. Rincon if he's upset by how I'm mispronouncing his name. It looks like Ismail. I'm going to say Ismail Rincon. We've proved it's him, or we can show it's him, and this is how we know it's him. So go ahead and issue the warrant for the arrest. So all that, it goes to show that, just fast forward to a few hours later, and they go out and cop watch. Now, it wasn't sounding like they were cop watching. From what the officer said, and again, I haven't watched the video, don't really care. But from what the cops said, and from what the judge heard, because that's an actual judge. This guy right here is John Wells III. He is a district court judge. District court in Texas is their court of general jurisdictions. They can hear felony cases. They can hear civil cases. They can do the whole 9 yards. Appeals from lower courts, from the county courts and the municipal courts, can go up to the district courts. So they are the courts of general jurisdiction in Texas. So this is a real judge. He's not just some municipal judge. I know somewhere in here it says municipal judge. This one says City of Livingston municipal judge. Did the first one? No, it didn't. So I think they just issued it on this one because this is for I don't know, maybe for a misdemeanor or something. I don't know, but he is not a municipal judge. He's a full-blown district court judge. But the officers had to, say all the things they have to give probable cause to the judge to issue the arrest warrant. So, did they was all they did was go out and watch the police and never did anything wrong? Well, I'm not saying, just before anybody blows a gasket, I'm not saying that these guys actually committed any crimes. I don't think that they committed any crimes, but they didn't just go out and cop watch. That's all I'm saying. So he explains what it is. It's become increasingly more popular as people have become to realize the police don't have the integrity that they used to think they did. The police constantly argue that we don't need to do this because they have their own body cameras recording all their actions. But due to the fact that many police have zero integrity, they often don't turn on their body cameras, mute their body cameras, or refuse to give public footage when it's asked for. But yeah, it's a good idea to record the police. In this case in particular, the police have already refused to release this body cam footage. Well, yeah, again, ongoing case. Now, they will release it to the attorneys, I assure you. They'll release it to the attorneys for the defendants as part of their, Brady package. They have to turn over all the evidence, both exculpatory and inculpatory. So yeah, they'll definitely the the attorneys will definitely get the body cam footage. And after it's clear that there is no there are no charges to be brought, or after they're dismissed, then the police might release them because they're no longer part of an investigation. I can see it's a little unreasonable to kind of insist that the police turn over their body cam footage just right after an arrest, because they might not know what they have, and they might not want to tip off people as to what they have, etc. We would be left with nothing but police testimony that these guys conspired to commit organized crime. Well, you have the police testimony, and it's I don't know what the defendants will have that would rebut any of these things. I mean, the cop felt like he was being stalked, and there's no video evidence that's really going to rebut that. I mean, the viewer might look at it and say, well, I don't think the cop was being stalked, but that doesn't mean the cop didn't feel like he was being stalked. Is the video going to, like, what part of this is the video going to rebut? That they stopped in a convenience store parking lot or not? That Rincon got out of the vehicle to put on a ballistic vest? I mean, who knows? But none of that is going to really rebut any of this. I'll leave a link to the full video that I just shared a couple weeks ago, but we'll show you a few clips that show just how ignorant the Livingston police really are, why they are acting suspicious, right? Who they are. Can't you stop anybody? It's acting suspicious. Oh, so now this is where this is the clip, and so have you ever heard of 3802, you dumbass? So again, the officer actually had the right to stop them, and if they did, if the driver, specifically the driver, didn't give them, it's a $200 fine, and then for second conviction within 1 year, it's a misdemeanor, and then third conviction is misdemeanor again with 72 hours up to 6 months. Yep. So, 3802 is not the only statute in Texas. Most states, all the states that I am aware of, the police officers can demand the driver's identification. The driver of a vehicle can demand their identification. And you're like, oh, well, that's only if he has probable cause. Well, no. I mean, they could actually do driver's license checkpoints, DUI checkpoints. So, at a DUI checkpoint, they can demand to see your driver's license. So, yeah, buddy. All right. So, failing to ID is a secondary charge. Well, again, not under the Transportation Code, buddy. So Officer Simmons with the Livingston Police Department during the stop exposes himself as being both ignorant and arrogant. Well, so anybody can demand ID at any time. Like, I could demand your ID right now. Show me your ID right now. I could do that. That doesn't mean you have a legal obligation to show me your ID, and it doesn't mean I can arrest you for it. But the police can demand your ID at any particular time. They could do it. Now, whether or not you have to give it to them, that's the question. And whether or not they could do anything to you if you don't, that's also the question. If you have, like, I've seen several states where they say that you have to give them your ID if they ask, but there's no penalty if you don't. Well, then, do you really have to? Because, like, what if nothing happens to you if you don't? Then who really cares, right? Then it's not really. You don't really have to do it if there's no penalty. he claims that these are suspicious people in a suspicious place, and therefore Texas state law says he can get ID. Matt corrects him, citing the actual Texas Penal Code 3802 that states that a person only has to ID when lawfully arrested. So yeah, the passengers probably didn't have to show ID. So even if ignorant Simmons were to arrest somebody for failure to ID, they wouldn't be obligated to ID because the arrest would be unlawful, and the statute specifically states the person must be lawfully arrested to be required to ID. Furthermore, so if they had been arrested, which they weren't, maybe. Furthermore, Officer Simmons never states for any crime or criminal activity that he suspects these people of, just that recording police in general is suspicious. Well, Officer Simmons isn't required to tell you anything, and cops can lie to you, so I wouldn't really waste time on much of that. You're not going to tell me where the law is. I know what the law is. Detention lasts about 15 minutes, during which time the backup officer talks Officer Simmons in the back of the car, informing Officer Simmons the detention is illegal. I wonder really if he said the detention was illegal. I doubt that. He informs Officer Simmons the guys in the car do know the law better than him. Again, I doubt that, but that would be interesting if he said that. But I doubt he said that. That they know their rights and that he's in big trouble. Again, just press X to doubt here. I think this is I guess theoretically anything's possible, but this sounds like a James Freeman wet dream right here. He lets him know the guy in the backseat is Brandon White. I believe that. I believe that Reyes told Simmons that Brandon White was the guy in the backseat. Known for recording police officers. Simmons returns the car and claims since the officer identified the guy in the back, they're now free to go. Mr. White, people are calling saying which one? Okay, this is back to the video. I know you are. I'll let you go. The reason why he needs to identify you is because he doesn't know who you are, and you can be a team radio into another team to commit a crime a few days later. Okay, so here we go. The Livingston Police Department decided to retaliate against these vehicles for recording all four of them. So, I mean, that's not reflected in this. It could be that the officers actually believed. It could be the officers actually feared for their safety and actually believed that they were being stalked. And maybe. And maybe. But I don't know. Or maybe they are just dicks who were upset about the recording. Who knows? All four individuals in the car were charged with conspiracy to commit organized crime and slapped with $100,000 bonds. Now, first I'm going to go over the only crime that's actually alleged in these warrants, and then we'll go over how most of the narrative in the warrants talks about how Officer Simmons had his feelings and ego hurt. The only crime that's alleged is Texas Penal Code 42.061, silent or abusive calls to 911. There are two affidavits here. The first one, I know this is marked page 2 and marked page 3, but this should be page 2. So the first one is engaging in organized criminal activity. Engaging in organized criminal activity. That's the first allegation. That's apparently all four of them, I'm going to guess, got this, but I've only seen the one for Ismail Rincon. And so, who collaborated in carrying on and the hereinafter described criminal activity, conspired to commit the offense of obstruction and retaliation. By agreeing with each other, they would engage in conduct that constituted the offense. So they are now you don't actually have to commit the crime to be guilty of conspiracy to commit the crime. Conspiracy to commit the crime just means you've reached an agreement to do the crime. And the uh, the engaging in organized criminal activity encompasses the crime or conspiracy to commit a crime. Because if you remember, it was a person commits an offense, so you've already committed the offense. If with the intent to establish, maintain, or participate in combination or the profits, a person commits or conspires to commit. So you've committed this crime if you've conspired to commit one of the following, yada yada. And in this particular case, they're alleging that they conspired to commit the crime of obstruction and retaliation. So it's conspiracy to commit obstruction and retaliation, and that is in the form of, and that is also engaging in organized criminal activity. So that's one. I guess technically it's two, because the others are lesser included. And then there is the second affidavit and the second warrant for arrest, false report to induce emergency response. And this one alleges that a find would show that he's a duly licensed peace officer in for the state of Texas, currently serving as a detective for the city of Livingston Police Department. The find would further show that on February 4th, 2022, his agency investigated an offense of false alarm or report, which occurred at 113 Banks Drive, Livingston, Polk County, Texas. A find which showed Sergeant Ronnie Bogany was dispatched in the aforementioned address in reference to a male subject walking in a residential housing area where children may be present, with a gun equipped with a silencer. A find would show the 911 call, a 911 caller. Not that, but anyway, that's for a different part. Okay, so he would show that a 911 caller said the male was walking with a gun in his hand, and the entire neighborhood was going crazy. A find would show that a second 911 call was also received by this department. A find would show that Sergeant Bogany was joined by Officer Scott Paskey, and the two approached residents and made contact with the four subjects who were inside the residence. A find would show due to the nature of the call, 5 additional officers left their normal duties in order to respond. The find would show that the subjects were later identified through further investigation, yada, yada, yada. A find would show that White McCrory, and the unidentified male immediately began filming Sergeant Bogany and Officer Paskey with their cell phones. A find would show another cell phone was observed propped up in the window and faced the front door where Sergeant Bogany and Officer Paskey were standing. A find would show Sergeant Bogany began an investigation and attempted to identify the individuals in the residence. However, they refused to comply with his demand to identify themselves. The find would show Rankin was the suspect in possession of the handgun and also refused to show any paperwork in regards to the silencer on his handgun, which was requested by Officer Paskey. The find would show due to the actions of Rankin, this agency received 2 911 calls from individuals who perceived his actions as alarming. The find would show both 911 callers were collected as evidence. So there was not one, there were 2 crimes with a lesser included, I guess. So he's wrong that the only crime that's alleged is Penal Code 42.061, silent or abusive calls 911. He goes on to say, a person commits this offense when they call 911 reporting an emergency when they know there's no emergency. Which, sure, I mean, that's loosely what it means, yes. That's a good basis of understanding for it. Now, I have heard of people previously, such as News Now Patrick and News Now Houston, either calling the cops on themselves or asking other people to call the cops on them in order to get a police interaction and a YouTube video. If that was what happened here, I want to know so I could tell all of you that is what happened. But the Livingston police refused to release the phone calls, and they don't even actually claim that any of these people made the calls, but that neighbors made them. It appears the actual allegation is that HBO Matt knew that by legally carrying a firearm, someone would call 911. So, all right, let's just pause there for a minute. we don't know from the affidavit who called 911. Now, in order for let's I guess go through it. Let's see if I can find it somewhere in here. Here we go. So a person commits the offense if, so they have to do all of these things. They have to do 1 through 4. And we know they have to do 1 through 4 because there's a and on this one. So they have to do all 4 of these things. So number 1, person makes a report of a criminal offense or an emergency, or causes a report of a criminal offense or emergency to be made to a peace officer, yada yada. So that's number 1. They have to make a report or cause a report to be made. Now, that's only one thing. So they have to have made a report or cause it to be made. That's step 1. Step 2 is they have to know the report is false. Now, how do you know what a unknown 911 caller is saying? How do you know what an unknown 911 caller is saying? If Matt did not instruct someone to call the police and tell them what to say, or give them an idea of what reaction they were looking for, so that caller could then say things that HBO Matt would know are false. If he did not do that, how would he know what the unknown caller said? Like if HBO Matt was just walking down the road at random and someone drew by that he didn't know, saw the gun, and called 911, how could HBO Matt know whether or not what that person said was true or false if he didn't know that they were making the call? Because he has to know at the time that report is false. Because that's step 2. So it really has to be, the only way you could read this that it makes sense is that the person who makes a report or causes a report to be made has to be like in on it. Has to be like, we need to get a police presence out here. So like let's say it's News Now Patrick. News Now Patrick could be like, oh, I'm going to call the police and report, some fat schlub who is annoying and looks like a 13-year-old is out, I don't know, robbing banks and filming himself doing it. He could do that. And if he calls the police and does that, then he has made a knowingly false report, because he knows he's not out there robbing banks. So he knows he's made a false report. Or he could say, hey, Selena, I think he's still with Selena, I don't know. I'm going to assume he's with Selena. He could say, Selena, why don't you call and say that you saw a guy who looks like me robbing banks and filming himself doing it. Then he's causing a report to be made that he knows is false. It's the only way you could read it. The report has to cause an emergency response, and in making the report or causing the report to be made, the person, i.e. Patrick, or I guess in my hypothetical it would be Patrick. In this case, in the actual case, it'd be HBO Matt, would have to be reckless as to whether or not the emergency response by a law enforcement agency or other emergency responder may result in the bodily injury to another person. So, again, what this is designed to do is people would see someone streaming a video game or something online, and they'd know where that person lived, and they'd call 911 and say, yeah, there's a hostage situation, and the guy's threatening to kill us, and I'm in the house, and I'm scared for my life, and he's got a gun, and he's already shot somebody. Send the police, send the SWAT. And the SWAT would come in, and all the viewers would be titillated by seeing this person who's streaming a video game get arrested, not knowing what the hell's going on. And that person, the guy playing the video game, he might get shot because not knowing what's going on, cops come in, guns drawn, that guy might pull his own gun out and be like, I don't know who these people are, might try to defend himself, and, blah, blah, blah. So, in making the report or causing the report to be made, the person who is getting arrested for this has to be acting with reckless disregard as to whether or not there's going to be some injury to another person. And that's another thing. if HBO Matt is calling it on himself, then he has to be reckless as to whether or not someone else is going to get hurt. But he's the guy with the gun who the police are going to come at. So none of this makes sense unless one of the other people, Matt or one of the other people in the group, called. Now, I'm not saying they did or they didn't, because I don't know. But it only makes sense that they would charge him with this if they believe that Matt or one of the other people in that group made the call. Now, they could also just be completely misreading this. Who knows? Who knows? The affidavit claims that Sergeant Bogney responded to the call of a man with a gun. Did it? Yeah, I guess. Okay. I'm sorry. And the individuals he spoke to refused to identify themselves and refused to give him paperwork in regards to handgun. But none of this information is relevant, as no one was legally obligated to identify themselves or provide any paperwork. Therefore, it's an arrest affidavit with a story that includes no crimes. So the police are going to give more information in these than is really necessary, because the last thing you want to do is when you get there to the judge and you say, yeah, so we want to arrest this guy for making a false call. Well, why was it false? You actually have to allege that it was false. You have to allege all these things. How do you know it's this guy? How? Show me. Backtrack from. You say that he didn't give you his ID. Did he give you his ID? No, he didn't. Then how do you know it's the guy? So police are going to give a lot more information than is technically necessary, because judges like to ask questions. And the last thing you want to do is not have one of the judge's questions answered, because you need to get that probable cause in order to get the affidavit. You need to get the probable cause in order to get the arrest warrant. So long story short, not everything that the officer's saying there might be, not everything that they say is technically relevant to the actual crime, but it gives the judge a bit of understanding of what's going on. Why are you guys, so there was a gun, right? Oh yeah, there was a gun. Okay, I just want to make sure that there was a gun. How did this play out, etc. So he says it's an arrest affidavit with a story that includes no crimes. Well, again, I think they're claiming that HBO Matt, just by carrying the pistol with the silencer and maybe waving it around or something, and making the entire neighborhood go crazy. I think that they're alleging that just by doing that, he's violated that particular Texas Penal Code. But I don't read it that way. Where are we at? Here we go. I don't read it that way. So maybe there is some novel way to read it that they're trying to do, but they convinced a judge. So I don't know. But then again, you also have to remember that there was the other affidavit. There was the initial affidavit against Ismail and Cohen that alleges the conspiracy to obstruct. All right. The affidavit quite literally states, now literally, I don't think he's using literally correctly here, but he's saying that it quite literally says that when police responded to a call of someone exercising their Second Amendment right, the defendants exercised their First Amendment right to record. It doesn't literally say that. Police, while exercising their Fourth Amendment right to be secure in their persons, papers, and effects. In other words, these people exercised multiple constitutionally protected rights. Simultaneously, in the Livingston Police Department has super hurt feelings about that, but the probable cause affidavit referring to the incident later that evening with Officer Simmons is even better. It doesn't even pretend to state a crime at all, but it repeatedly states the officer Simmons. Well, it does. It does state a crime. I think we just went over it, so I'm not going to drag you through it again. But the allegation is that they conspired to commit the offense of obstruction and retaliation, and that is further subsumed in the engaging in organized criminal activity. And you see here, they, with the intent to establish, maintain, or participate in a combination, or in the profits of combination. The combination consisting of the defendant, yada, yada, yada. So they're establishing the elements of engaging in organized criminal activity. So Officer Simmons had very hurt feelings about the incident. It claims that a detective swore upon his oath that his agency investigated the offense of engaging in organized criminal activity, which occurred at 308 West Church Street, Livingston, Polk County, Texas. I'm not going to read the affidavit word for word, but if you want to, you can pause and read it yourself. Also, note that while the affidavit does not claim any criminal activity, it does claim criminal activity. It does include we both have to sell property rather than pointing out those laws until they are never given. Let's go here. Let's
not claim any criminal activity. It does include both had to sell property, but rather than pointing out those lies here and now, we will wait.
Oh yeah, this is where he's double speaking.
Wait until the officers swear to these lies under oath in deposition. The affidavit states that Officer Simmons witnessed a vehicle following him around.
Okay. So I don't know what he was trying to say there. I'm not going to try to parse it out. Officer Simmons was super scared. Yeah, thanks for reading it, without your personal opinion on it. People were watching him in his official capacity. The affidavit claims the officer Simmons ran the plates on the vehicle and registration came back to Laredo, Texas, making it even more suspicious. After all, who registers a four-door sedan in Laredo, Texas? Well, again, that is a good question. As we just established, Laredo, Texas is on the border, and it was 6 hours away from Livingston. So, why are you up there? What are you doing? Due to the fact that there were individuals in a blue four-door sedan registered to Laredo, Texas, reporting police officer Simmons did a stop on that vehicle. A fiant which showed the driver and all occupants in the vehicle ignored Officer Simmons' request for their identification. As a result of their suspicious behavior, a fiant would show that the front seat white male passenger was video recording with his cell phone and being verbally rude to Mr. Simmons while conducting his investigation. Right now, you're failing the ID, so I'm about
to arrest you.
Okay, so we're back to the video. All right.
The only crime even alleged is a false 911 call, which is not one of the crimes listed in the Penal Code 7102. And again,
it's not the only crime. 7102. All right. 7102 was this one. So 7102 says that you have to be conspiring to do one of the following, doing or conspiring to do one of the following, and 610 is this one. 46.0601 is not listed. So he's correct. 46.0601 is not listed. However, Chapter 36, any offense is listed, and Chapter 36, 3606, obstruction or retaliation, might sound familiar because we've gone over it a couple times. Person commits an offense if that person intentionally or knowingly harms or, and this is the important thing, threatens to harm another by an unlawful act in retaliation for or on account of the service or status of another person as a public servant, witness, prospective witness, or informant, or a person is reported, blah, 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 or to prevent or delay the service of another as a public servant. So I guess the allegation is that by stalking the officer, it was to either prevent them or delay their service of another as a peace officer, or in retaliation because he was a peace officer. So I guess that's the what they're going with there. It doesn't appear they're alleging that any of these people made a false 911 call, but that Matt would know that open carrying a firearm would cause a 911 call. I agree with your analysis there, James, that does appear to be what they're alleging. Well, it appears to be the angle they're going for, but who knows? I mean, they haven't released anything and they haven't tipped their hands yet, so maybe they are going to allege that one of the four people made the calls, or two of the four people made the calls. Who knows? And so yada yada yada. Anyway, I'm kind of bored with this. I hope you're bored with it too. Long story short is that James Roon would make a terrible defense attorney, because you actually have to understand what the charges are, what your clients are facing, and you can't just make it up as you go along. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.